Tuesday. It's about that time. We are live. This is PrimerTime on UCY.tv. My name is Michael, and I was observing some CP.
Oh, that would be why we are 1 or 2 minutes behind 9 o'clock. My name is Nicholas. It's good to be here.
Nick, what's going on with you?
Oh, just another day in Mr. Robinson's neighborhood, and that would be in Louisiana. A place where two grown black men can go ahead and shoot each other to death, and
and have an impact on a discussion regarding by people who have absolutely nothing to do with the Second Amendment, who in fact end up profiting off of the destruction of the culture. Because, to be honest with you, this is part of the culture decay right here. This little incident in Louisiana with New Orleans Saints player Will Smith and former player, and it turned into
doesn't
kind of a mess.
Doesn't affect anybody's fantasy league here.
Absolutely not. No. So you go ahead and continue to bet on NFL as it was normal.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've seen this in the past. We've seen Brent Musburger, open up his mouth and
it wasn't Musburger. It was a Musburger.
Right, yeah, no.
Brett Musburger calls college football games. There you go, Mr. Pink Eye.
So, we've got these people, really opening their mouth and making statements where they have no place at the time. It really just knee-jerk reactions. And comes to find out that as the situation is being explained and explored further in Louisiana, it may not just be a wanton murder
there's always more to the story than what originally and initially comes out. The fact of the matter is that two grown men who couldn't figure out how to end an argument without shooting each other did what comes to this natural conclusion in that area. Just like what it was, if it was Chicago, if it was Detroit, if it was DC, doesn't matter when. Bill Clinton took quite a bit of heat for breaking the cardinal rule of a Democrat, and that's thou shalt not contradict Black Lives Matter. He came out with both fists swinging, and he took him to task, and he said, this is all about the super predator. And when Bill Clinton was in office, the super predator was the black drug dealer who was enlisting 13 and 12-year-olds to go sell the drugs for him, and he brought that out. And the problem that we have,
and that's truly a statistic that's been mentioned, and it's a topic that's impossible to cover without being accused of being a racist or anything, when it's actually just facts. I mean, if you really want to stop gun crime in the United States, if you want to stop gun crime in the United States, honestly, the fastest way to do it is to stop the possession of firearms by black males between the ages of 15 and 35. That's just how it is.
They tried to do that once. Something during Lyndon Baines Johnson's time.
We've got issues with that. That's not going to happen. But it doesn't matter that it's not going to happen because you're not allowed to discuss it, and that's really kind of. I think it's shifting the blame, and really it's not anywhere near any sort of accuracy. You can't continue to claim that Vermont, of all places, is responsible for almost all the guns that come into New York and into New York City and are used in crimes where the numbers come out to be that.
Here's where I take exception to Miss Pantsuit in Chief. It's one thing to say, hey, all the guns that get confiscated or that are used illegally in New York come from Vermont. That's only because her opponent comes from Vermont.
Right. And the numbers completely.
Virginia.
The numbers completely show a different.
North Carolina. It doesn't matter.
It's whatever Hillary says. She has a habit of saying whatever is convenient at the time and whatever will advance her position.
And what kind of time would that
not get in the way? Facts do not real.
Yeah, what kind of time would that be? CP time?
That's right.
That's right. Hillary Clinton showed her true colors and said that with her and Bill de Blasio on Broadway of all places, with a black American on stage for the play Hamilton, Bill de Blasio remarked that he was late because he was on CP time.
And she tried to play it off by saying it was concerned politician, but that's a kind of in that area that's known as colored people time.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what they're discussing on the news. It's not just us being racist or anything. That's just the way it is.
Can you be racist if you hate everybody equally? I think that's kind of.
I believe that's equal opportunity, and that puts you to the front of the line, sir.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about. And for anybody else who's wondering, no, we still do not have White European Male History Month in the Department of Defense.
And there will not be. And there will not be.
Yeah, I know. I asked that.
You are responsible for all of the world's ills.
Yeah, I know. I just I asked about that last week because we had mandatory equal opportunity training because we do this 4 times a year. We do this quarterly, just to tell you.
How often do you get sexual harassment training along with the?
Oh, you do SHARP, which is the sexual harassment and assault prevention. You get that. You get equal opportunity training. You get the Ask Care Escort, which is the suicide prevention training, and SHARP TARP. So you get the Total Army. It's basically our counterintelligence briefings. You get all that is done quarterly. So whether you need it or not, every 90 days you're going to be reminded that there's white privilege, that women get paid less than men, that now that the Department of Defense has opened up combat arms to all soldiers, regardless of gender, you get it. And I can tell you, 20 something years ago when I enlisted into the service, you could have told me that in my lifetime that would change. And I would have said, you're full of shit. And lo and behold, here it is. The U.S. Army just had the first female enlist into the MOS 11 X-ray, which is infantry recruit. And it's a 25-year-old woman out of Phoenix, Arizona, who's going to join to be in infantry.
I almost thought it would have been somebody much younger than 25, just because they're dumber when they're younger.
Well, this individual, she's a police officer in her location, and she's wanting to show exactly what it is that women can do. But it's interesting because there was a woman who enlisted earlier for the MOS 12 Bravo, which for those of you who don't know is combat engineer, said the very same thing upon enlisting, and she decided to go AWOL. So I've put soldiers into the Army who joined initially for 11 X-ray, and they could not even hack that. I mean, these are stout, young, 18-year-old guys who could not hack it and had to get out. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it won't be done at the same level as the average male.
And, really in the end, the military's job is not to nation build or to set policy or anything. The job is to go in there and destroy the shit out of things. So,
you have to fundamentally remake America.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing right now. I do believe that's exactly what we're seeing. And
you have to fundamentally
personal experience here. Personal experience in my little tiny hick town of nowhere. People are actually becoming aware, and with the recent political shenanigans involving Colorado and Trump, and this could end up being something that's just a little bit more than we thought it would be. There's some people who are really up in arms about this, but they're going to be up in arms about something. I personally think that right now is the calm before the storm. Buy up while you can, because as soon as Hillary hits, she's going to be a hurricane.
Oh, well, and that's the thing, too. So we were talking about Hillary Clinton being on Colored People Time. Had that been Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, the heavens would have opened, and the Hillary supporters would be out in droves talking about how the microaggression against colored people would not stand. And
this wouldn't have been considered a microaggression.
No. This is a flat-out assault on people.
Of his continual racism and his alignment with David Duke and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I mean, people conveniently forget he opened up his golf course, his private resort golf club, to minorities. He was the first one in that area to open up a golf course and private resort like that to minorities.
Yeah.
So I really don't I don't see where it's at. If he's just dancing around words or whatever, and they're just not,
Well,
people aren't happy with
realistically,
speaking.
that's what politicians do. Politicians dance around words, and it's unfortunate, but it's the age that we live in, and it isn't even only just like that in our country. We've had to talk about the common sense approach to gun control in a place like Australia, right? So,
And we've seen that Australia's common sense gun control is everything but common sense.
right. Well, it's common sense if you're of the personal mindset that believes that nobody needs a firearm. So one of the interesting stories we have is that the gun control advocates in Australia are now trying to ban a pretty old technology. This is basically a lever action shotgun, and they're trying to retroactively ban these.
Nick, this is just another step in Australia's decline. Lever action shotgun made by a Turkish company. I believe it's not Akdal. What was the name? Adler.
Adler. It's a good German name. It means eagle.
Adler, the German named shotgun company out of Turkey, makes this lever action shotgun, and it operates like a standard lever action. And I believe it's got a magazine capacity of 3 in the tube and 1 in the chamber, so you've got 4. Well, that's considered high capacity in Australia, and the speed at which it can be reloaded approaches that of a semi-automatic. Dun dun.
Yeah, that's 2 words when you put them together. An angel loses his wings.
Yeah, well, I'm just surprised that they haven't said that the shotgun comes with a 600 round, assault
magazine clip.
Right, a magazine clip that holds 600 rounds a minute or something like that. With a shoulder thing that goes up.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that in Australia, especially in the Western Territory, they have a genuine need for self-defense. I mean, there are probably some of the most dangerous species and deadliest species on Earth that reside in Australia's territory and in their territorial waters. Not that a shotgun is going to do you much good out on the boat, but it may help you keep back a shark.
I'll tell you what, I'd rather take my chances with one than without one.
That's true. So, the way I look at it is, lever action shotguns actually have a good place in American pop culture, because if you remember from Terminator, Arnold decided to go ahead and let loose with one of those while he was on his Los Angeles road riot on a motorcycle.
That's right. And in the United States, there's not a lot of lever action shotguns available. Usually if you find one, it's going to either be older manufacturer and quite a pretty penny, or it's going to be newer and either Chinese or wherever Chiappa makes theirs, which I would almost guess is Chinese, and they just rebrand it. If you find an older model, chances are you're going to find it in 410 or in 20 gauges. It doesn't seem to be a lot of 12 gauges sitting around that are lever action. And usually those 410 Winchester lever actions usually go for about $1,400 a piece. They're not an unpopular weapon, so to speak. So we go from the idiocy of Australia and the just fearful look backwards at yesterday's technology to a kind of a bright spot and a hope for the future. Beretta has opened up their factory in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's a Gallatin, Tennessee. So that's one of those things that
going to concentrate on the M9A3, which is Beretta's successor to the.
That was their offering to the M9.
Well, it's their offering to the wonderful Army pistol procurement process, which is still kind of a joke. And actually, I'd like for you to touch on that for a little while, because we had some interesting news in the past couple of days, and it finally somebody made some sense.
Yeah. So basically, what we have is the Army has a pretty long procurement process when it comes to selecting a new service rifle or a new service pistol, and it's not without what seems to be changing goalposts. We have a chief of staff of the Army who's been out in media saying, you know what, if this was a priority and we really wanted to get this done, you could give me a credit card and 17 something million dollars on it, and I could go out and fit every single service member, regardless of branch, with a pistol and get a discount for doing it on a bulk buy. Be done with it. But
you're right, and it wouldn't be a crap pistol. It'd be something that's out there, something that's actually got an infrastructure in place. They're talking about this general was talking about going with a Glock 19, a venerated pistol. It's got more than a 30-year service history in the United States. I believe the very first Glock prototype, with the Glock pistol prototype, were produced in 1982. So we're looking at over 30 years of a seriously well-made, quality handgun that's got a decent life. And I believe reading some of the specs on the pistol and the Army pistol contract, they're currently the government is currently buying Glock pistols, and I think it was $320 per firearm, which is, I believe, a significant savings over what they're paying for the Beretta right now.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. If the competition is really up to changing between the different calibers that are going to be offered, whether it's 9mm 40 caliber Smith & Wesson or 45, then there's room for that competition to take place. But if it's gonna end up being sticking with 9mm, then really, do you need a competition to see which one fires better? I mean, maybe if it comes to,
I'm with you on that. There's no need to reinvent the wheel when we have so many wheels out there. And honestly, you start reinventing the wheel enough, and it'll go square.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where we're at in a lot of decisions that get made today. It's interesting. We had 3 more religious exemptions get approved for the Army so that Sikhs can circumvent the personal grooming standards that every other service member in the Army has to do.
So, do you have an issue with this, or is this becoming?
What I have an issue with doesn't have anything to do with their religious background or their religious, whatever their inclination is. I could care less. What I have a problem with is we have an organization, we have an institution that was founded on standards, and the upholding of standards fell to a certain section of that force, and that happens to be the enlisted corps, the non-commissioned officer corps. You have the different cohorts. You have the officer corps, you have the NCO corps, and then you have the soldiering corps, which is privates and such. If you want to have standards and you want to maintain those standards, then the standards should be applied equally across the board. And if the standards get loosened or relaxed for a certain segment of the population, and dare I say minority segment of the population, then what you don't really have is standards. You have suggestions. And you tell me the name of an Army that functioned on suggestions, and I will tell you which one failed.
Well, I've got a question now. The Sikhs that have obtained this exemption to this, how are they related to the Gurkhas?
So Sikhs are a religious minority coming out of India, whereas Gurkhas were a fighting regiment out of Nepal that fought under the British Crown. So
and were they
totally
was that
different.
Comprised of Sikhs?
No. Like I said, the Gurkhas are Nepalese.
They all look the same wearing them hats.
Wow.
So I guess I was wrong on that.
Racist? You so
well, because look, like the Gurkhas have like a seriously tough military lineage. I mean, there's all kinds of stories of absolute, just unimaginable bravery coming out of Gurkha soldiers. And honestly, I don't know. So I was just wondering if the Sikhs were
actually, one of the in the British Army, one of the last soldiers to earn the Victoria Cross was a member of the Royal Gurkha Rifles Regiment, and he earned that in Afghanistan. And going from way back, to the British colonial times, to when the Gurkhas first started fighting with the British. It was in Gurkha tradition that if a Gurkha removed his kukri, which is his knife, from his sheath, he would not put it away unless it had blood on it. And as a matter of fact, within the last couple of years in Afghanistan, there's been some problems in England with the young Gurkha soldiers trying to maintain that tradition, and having decapitated some Afghan Taliban.
Okay, so
didn't go over well.
you brought up the interesting item, the Kirky knife. Now, people may not know what it is. I'm lucky enough to have one, which is from you, and is inscribed from Afghanistan.
That it is.
Fairly interesting piece. What I like about it is it's got like a fairly substantial blade, and it's got a good bit of weight behind it. The one you sent me, I think, was more decorative, but it does have a significant blade to it, and I have put a nice sharp edge to it, and
yeah, and if you,
I think I'd use that for zombie chopping time.
Yeah, if you've ever had the privilege of holding a kukri in your hand, you'll know that the handle, while small, is significant and allows you to wield significant momentum and inertia when bringing that around. And the curvature of the blade is made specifically for chopping.
And I could see that doing a fairly decent job of that once you get a really good edge on one of those.
Yeah,
I think that's a definite. And that's definitely a zombie survival.
It is form over aesthetics, definitely.
Right. Now, kind of in the zombie survival mode today, I got a chance to go to a buddy of mine's house, and he picked up something new, and it's something that I'm somewhat familiar with, but haven't really played with a whole lot, and I'll tell you what, I really liked it. The more I held it and used it today, and that was a Ruger LCP 380. And man, I'll tell you honestly, I'm not necessarily a 380 fan, and I kind of find that design from Ruger. Well, number one, it's stolen. Ruger stole that design completely from Keltec. That's I mean, stolen to the point of where magazines interchange between the two of them. So, I mean, there's that. And then, Ruger's got a lot greater quality control than Keltec does. They've got greater manufacturing capacity. So, you bring all that together, and then along with the price that my friend paid, which I think was less than $300, got himself a nice little thing. Now, I'll tell you what, the thing was light. It was really, really light. And you and I have spoken about this many times, that, like, the need for a small concealable pistol of significant caliber is coming, and this is one of those items that truly does, I think, meet the definition of a pocket pistol. I personally kind of like a single action, like similar to a Browning high power, and the only small one like that is the Sig 938. Sig 938 is steel construction or all metal construction. It's heavy. While it is pocket pistol size, there's nothing pocket pistol about it unless you want your pants down around your ankles.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when it comes to Ruger's LC line. You got the LCP, you got the LCR, LC9. A lot of different things to choose from. And if you want to go, have you ever heard the 380 called the Browning 9mm or 9mm Browning?
Yeah, I have. And I've heard it called 9mm Kurz. I've heard it called 9x17. There's a bunch of different names for the 380, just like there are for the 9mm. This little thing, I'll tell you what, was pretty nifty. I mean, it had a 6-round magazine, so 6+1 in the chamber. There was no safety on it, like very similar to a Glock. And I'll tell you, I'm usually not very fond of the controls on something very, very small like that, but I was able to hit the slide release and have the slide drop forward and pick up a new round in that pistol, which is something that's kind of unusual for something very small like that. I thought it was very, I guess your finger placement on the trigger was very important as to where your bullet ended up.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the same thing for the M9. And especially if you decide to manually depress the hammer prior to firing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I still got my problems with the M9. I mean, the M9 is the 92FS M9, whatever you want to call it. It's a great design. I really like my hammers to go down for off, or my safeties to go down for off. It just, that to me, that just makes sense, and I think that's the pattern I'm sticking with.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it's interesting because I really don't mess with the 380. Whether the 380 or 38 special being the same bullet diameter. you're going to get a lot more power out of the 38.
Yeah, they're both 355.355 around, but the bullet weights on a 380 are completely different than a
Well,
bullet weight
not only the bullet weight's different, but in the 38, you're going to be pocketing a lot more powder behind that bullet.
right. But the thing is a 38 special is kind of a holdover from an older time, right? It's kind of an updated black powder round, and that whole cartridge. I mean, if you were to shake a 38, a single 38 bullet, you can hear the powder rattling around inside.
Right. Yeah. You got some dead space in there.
So I mean, the 38 is limited. So I think that there's other choices, but that's not to say that the 38 special is ineffective by any means. It was, 38 special with 158 grain semi wad cutter is still a man stopper.
Yeah, that'll put you down. So I actually had a counterpart go ahead and pick up a new rifle. He actually sold one to get one, which I guess if you're going to do it, that's the way it's done. He sold his Mossberg MVP. Was not a fan of it. He didn't like the way that the bolt really had problems ejecting. For whatever reason, the lugs weren't going to catch on the shell. So basically, he took that into a big box, turned that into a CZ Model 455 Varmint in 17 HMR.
Man, I don't know. I think that's kind of a retrograde motion, even if you don't like the way the rifle works. I kind of have a problem with the 17 round. I don't have as much of a problem with the 17 centerfire rounds, but the 17 rimfire rounds are, to me, I don't know. They're kind of like paper punchers. I don't really see a plinking use for them because, number one, the ammunition is quite expensive. It's significantly more expensive than 22 long rifle ammunition. And number two, you've got a much smaller bullet. And while it is moving faster, it's a smaller bullet. Therefore, it's far more affected by wind than a 22 long rifle would be.
Right, but it's moving pretty.
Some of those come in at 22 grains, right? And a standard 22 long rifle is 40 grain. So I mean, like you've got a bullet that weighs less than half, and it's moving. It's moving faster, but I mean, it's marginally faster. It's it's no more than 300 feet per second faster.
Well, he picked it up specifically for varmint hunting out where we tend to shoot. We have a problem with groundhogs out here, and the farmer definitely wants us to go ahead and take those groundhogs out because they create holes and they create little subterranean divots, and cows step in them and break legs, and he doesn't like that. So he wants
no, because that's kind of a pain in the ass to have your cow take a broken leg. That's a significant investment for a farmer.
That's the loss of a cow.
A cow is probably about $1,500.
So
and then plus your time and your effort and your expense in raising it. So
yeah, so he's gonna use that specifically for the varmint hunting. Of course, right off the bat, he will be putting some holes in paper to determine which load works the best. And once he gets that done, he did remark to me that he is going to top it with a Zeiss 3x9x40, probably a Conquest scope or a Terra. And it's interesting because probably the first guy I've talked to in the Army that is not going to go right out and buy a Leupold scope or something like off of a Weaver. He does have a 11 millimeter dovetail base that he has to buy a conversion for a Picatinny rail. So that's an interesting thing. I would have figured that the CZ 455 would come with iron sights, but in the varmint model, it does not.
It does not. And I used to have a CZ 527 and 760 by 39. And one of the reasons why I really truly enjoyed that rifle before I ended up getting rid of it was it come from the factory with iron sights. And not only did it come with the iron sights, but the front side was hooded. And the hood was removable. I just really thought that was a nifty rifle. It kind of harkened back to an older time. That mini Mauser action is just, it's super slick, and it was just the right size pack.
It is a tried and true. Just the design you can't get better than. And for the most part, a lot of gun manufacturers copied that design to make what we have today.
Absolutely. I mean that's a design that we could say easily changed the course of history.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And, the interesting thing is that, I thought about it because I remember shooting your 527 and I thought, this is very similar to a Zastava 8mm Mauser that I have, which is called their LK-M98, which is not marketed in the United States. And fortunately, I picked one up in Europe. And that's just basically it's a Mauser action on a hunting stock, but it has that same, it's got the same iron sight. It's got the shroud over the front sight, and I think it actually helps out when you're looking downrange because you have
I believe that shrouded front sight, the hooded front sight, really does it kind of gives you almost a ghost ring effect.
Yeah, it does.
And I really did enjoy that. And I wouldn't mind getting another one that was built exactly like that. Hate to say it, but I'm probably moving to the 5.56 just because it's everywhere. And
and that's one of the things, So, in talking to my colleague, I asked him. I said, why don't you get yourself a 22? And he just said the ammo. That was right there. That was his reason. He said, the 17 ammo is everywhere.
But it's everywhere only for a little while.
Not in our area. We live in a place where 22 doesn't even get sold in Walmart anymore. It hasn't been in Walmart in our area for the better part of 2 years, and the only thing that is at our big box stores right now is Ely Hawk 22 for $20 a box, and the RWS for $9.99 a box, which is 20 cents a round, which is insane.
Yeah, that's double the price of what it was at the height of the scare here recently. I think I saw the localized cases of somebody wanting 50 cents a round for 22, but that's just some jackass just really trying to price gouge and make the mortgage payment. But that 22 long rifle price seemed to come down to about 7 to 10 rounds. But when the unpleasantness was going on and there was the great big shortage, it was the same situation. There was a lot of 17 HMR and 17 Mach 2 on the shelves, but that disappeared as well. And people bought rifles because that stuff was on the shelf. And then once the 22 started showing up, that stuff didn't ever come back.
Well, and like I said, some of that stuff, it shocks me that the 22 situation in my area just is still not available. And
that's really kind of crazy because if you go to the big box store by me, there's plenty of 22 right now, and you're still limited to a maximum of 500 rounds. You're limited to a maximum of 500 rounds now. It used to be a 2-box limit, and it didn't matter what the 2 boxes were or anything. So it's a limit of 500 rounds now, which is a brick, unless you come up. Somebody's got a 1,000-round pack, or like that 1,700 or 1,400 round bucket of bullets or something like that. But I think that's come into play. I don't see a lot of the secondary gouging on 22 long rifle anymore. I still see it every once in a while. Somebody say they got a bucket of bullets, and that retails for about 70 to 80 bucks at a big box store or Walmart if you can find it. And people regularly try to sell that for $140.
Yeah, actually, I got a mailer from Palmetto State Armory, and they had Remington bucket of bullets for $119.
Yeah, see, I think that's even expensive for them because you get that, and it's usually before the big explosion, that bucket of bullets was never any more than $80, and now it's
So
119 from a retailer is kind of stiff. But honestly, I think we're in the calm before the storm, man. I think everything kind of calmed down after the 2013 unpleasantness and subsequent pushes after that. I think no more of the old fear porn is working. People are saying
it's definitely working in the
shootings happen in gun-free zones, and people don't want the gun-free zones. People want at least the option to protect themselves. But I have a feeling that, once November hits, that's it.
Well, we talked about last week or the week before. We talked about the Northern Marianas Islands having a outright gun ban be struck down as unconstitutional, as they are a member of the Commonwealth of the United States. So what does every good liberal do in that regard? Make more laws to prohibit everything else, right? So they have
Absolutely.
attached a $1,000 surcharge to any purchase of a handgun.
That can't stand. That should be able to stand.
I mean, whether it can or not, you gotta figure every other city that has tried to do something like that, whether they call it a sin tax or they call it something else, they try. I mean, San Francisco did it. Seattle did
like
it.
Jody Weiss, who used to be head of Chicago police and then was picked up by Troy Industries. Troy Industries is a scumbag company, by the way. They picked up Dale Monroe and Lon Horiuchi, like murderers. I wouldn't spend a goddamn dollar on anything from Troy. But I mean, they picked up Jody Weiss, who was instrumental in setting in a lot of the legislation in Chicago. And you can't even call it legislation because it's really just like fiat decrees, especially after the Hiller decision was overturned. Chicago had to allow people to own a firearm or a handgun within the city limits. Well, they came up with several just draconian regulations similar to what the Marianas Islands want. And if they could have charged $1,000 a piece, I think they would have.
Yeah, they probably would have charged $10,000.
If they could have, I mean, this is where I think things falling apart because people got to be able to see through this.
Well, but some people want to see through it, and other people don't want to see through it. And it's the people that don't want to see through it have this blind belief or this I would call it illogical thought process that says, hey, I just don't need it because somebody will protect me. I don't know if you happen to see the story that's been blasted across just about every news aggregator site about a woman in the state of Washington in Seattle going out for a blind date and then being killed by the person who was on the date with her. I'm pretty sure had that woman had a firearm and been able to defend herself, we might not be finding her body parts in a dumpster somewhere. We may find her injured.
I read something about that, and there's something really funky about that. And I don't want to necessarily jump in and say if the woman had a gun, she'd be okay. But
she would have at least had the opportunity to defend herself.
She would have had a chance, man. And if for nothing else, that's all we need anymore is a chance. Because if we leave it up to them, you got no chance. You got no chance.
Yeah, give hope a chance. Keep hope alive.
People have.
So, no, that's I can't say that she did or didn't have any opportunity to defend herself.
Well, if we look at crappy gun laws and we look at this media push, we've got something going on in New York, which is kind of an interesting situation because New York State's got the SAFE Act, but New York State is unusual because there's New York as everybody thinks of it with, lights and Broadway and millions of people. And then there's upstate New York, which is very rural.
Everything outside of Albany and the city and the suburbs of New York City.
All right. And so there's a legislator who's putting through some changes to the SAFE Act, which would actually make the SAFE Act, as it stands, for New York and for the city of New York, and pretty much loosen the restrictions for everywhere outside of the city of New York.
Yeah. So basically, what he's trying to do is trying to get some parity where it says he's quoted as saying, if New York can enact different minimum wage requirements for New York City, Long Island, and Westchester, as well as upstate New York, then it should be acceptable to enact different gun laws for those regions as well. So, this is an argument that you kind of look at when it comes to, some other things that have been pushed through the courts. And I would say that has at least a chance of getting heard. I don't think for one instance that in a state like New York that it's ever going to get to pass. But, based on its own merits, I would think that at least it should
we do see that in not only in New York, but pretty much anywhere that there's anti-firearm legislation passed. It's a hell of a fight if you can ever get it overturned. And honestly, there's not a whole lot of anti-firearms regulations getting overturned.
Well, and that's the thing, because you take a look at, if anybody that doesn't remember, the New York SAFE Act was passed in a session of the New York Assembly around midnight with no dissenting votes against, because it wasn't even called for a floor vote. This was literally rammed through the New York legislature without any opposition.
Right, and we've got a history of things like that happening in this nation. I mean, if you really want to take it back, the thing that affects all of us right now, and that was ran through in a very similar fashion, was the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. So, yeah, it happens, and it will happen again.
Yeah, you know, and the sad thing is that I you know, by virtue of being in the military, I talk to a lot of people that come from New York, and you can tell based on their desire to remain in New York or their desire to get as far away from New York as soon as possible, whether or not they like the ability to own and you know, keep guns. And it's funny because you can just say, "Hey, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from New York." "You from the city? You from the country?" And if you say country and they correct you and say upstate, chances are they're probably going to want to, you know, own firearms. If they say, you know, "Oh, I'm from the city," chances are they're probably not. I mean, that's just my experience, and that's no means all
disappointed
inclusive.
that the military does not offer 40 caliber high points.
Yeah, no, thank goodness no. But you know what? I'd rather take a 40 caliber high point than nothing at all.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, that was kind of like just shitty of me to like crack on the high point like that, because it is a fairly functional weapon. Actually, I should say more than fairly functional. It is a functional weapon. It does have its limitations and drawbacks. I think that its greatest limitation is its magazines. If you can make sure that your magazine is in good shape, that pistol will function and function well for you. The magazines are the weak point, and unfortunately, those magazines are spendy. I mean, for a pistol that costs less than $200 brand new, the magazine shouldn't cost $40.
Well, we can talk about magazines costing upwards of $100, and I'll tell you about the Heckler and Koch SLB 2000.
Well, let's talk about that, because I've got a kind of a magazine story along those lines. But go ahead, let's talk about that magical German piece of equipment with the unavailable magazine.
Yes. So this is a semi-automatic 7.62 by 5.1. Actually, it is chambered as 308 Winchester, and yes, there are slight differences in the 308 Winchester and the 7.62 by 51. I don't want to bore you with the main details of that, but we'll say that the chamber pressure of the 308 Winchester is set for 62,000 pounds per square inch, whereas the 7.62 by 5.1 is set for about 50,000. So do the math on that and figure out which one you don't want to have a kaboom in. But anyways, this rifle was briefly imported into the United States through Heckler and Koch. Subsequently, it's been the rifle itself has been rebranded under a couple different companies that have either owned the name Heckler and Koch or had the rights to it, whether it was Haenel or whether it was Merkel for a period of time. And this is a piston operated semi-automatic rifle, and it's a self-cleaning piston system. It does operate with 2-round, 5-round, or 10-round box magazine, and those magazines are pretty spendy. We're talking in Europe, when you can find them, they're between, for a 10-round magazine, they're probably between 80 and 90 euros, which probably makes it right now anywhere between $140, $150 per magazine.
And that's not an item that's actually under any sort of restriction. I mean, in Europe it is, but in the United States, it's not under any sort of restriction. There's no legal injunction against the manufacturer, the possession, or the sale of any 10-round magazines for that rifle. Is that correct?
No. And you can actually purchase, like I said, that weapon is only subject to the requirement that you be a licensed and tested hunter, and that you have what's called a Waffenbesitzkarte, and that's the permission from your state, your federal state in Germany, to keep your weapons in your home. There's no requirement that you can only maintain a 2-round or a 5-round magazine. The only difference is that for hunting, certain states have a requirement that you can only hunt with a semi-automatic rifle for a 2-round magazine, and that's just to give the game what they call a sporting chance.
All right, so in the United States, looking for that, it's not illegal, it's not restricted or anything. It's just harder than hell to find.
Yeah, it's like I said, it was only imported for a limited amount of time, and surprisingly enough, I talked to the Mauser folks, Mauser USA, headquartered down in San Antonio. They said it just didn't sell well because, you know, with it being a self-cleaning system, you really don't have to take it apart. You don't have to set headspace or anything like that. You don't have to, do anything other than really run a cleaning patch down the bore with a cleaning brush and some CLP. They said that American sport shooters and hunters really wanted to get familiar with it, and they didn't feel confident doing with it. They felt like it was almost more of a piece of art than a functioning rifle.
Yeah, well, honestly, the rifle was priced a little. I mean, it was very, very pretty, but it was priced just a little bit out of like the sport shooters range.
It's definitely,
those things come
definitely
at $1,400, man.
I mean, an equivalent to it in contemporary terms, I would have to say is the BAR, the Browning automatic rifle. But the BAR hunting rifle, I would say, is
yeah, probably, not the military BAR,
no, not the military, but the hunting arm is probably the most equivalent, semi-automatic rifle.
This just hit me, but and I wonder if it would work, being that that's made by HK, and there are multitudes of HK G3 and Spanish CETME magazines floating around. I wonder if you could alter one of those to fit.
Anything's possible. I have a contact in Germany who frequently makes his own box magazine extensions for bolt action rifles that take detachable box magazines. He last one he did was adding a 10-round detachable box magazine to one of his 98s, his German 98 hunting rifles. And that was something that had a internal 5-round magazine, and he flipped it around and changed it to a 10-round detachable box, and specifically for shooting pigs during drive hunts.
That's pretty cool. That's something that you don't see, that level of customization. I think now we're kind of limited to customization by I changed the grips and I put a laser sight on it.
Yeah, and or maybe I just went ahead and changed the guide rod.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If they feel comfortable enough taking the pistol down to the point where they can access the guide rod.
Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to things like that, fortunately I was overseas long enough to where I could pick up some interesting things. What probably the things that I would have liked to have picked up but didn't get a chance to because I never saw any for sale were the what we call the Bachbuchse, which is basically an over-under shotgun and rifle combination. Whether it was from some of the manufacturers like CZ, Antonio Zoli, a couple other good manufacturers like Merkel, Sauer and Son.
Sometimes you start looking at prices of rifles and prices of handguns and start thinking, wow, that's really expensive. You really want to spend some money, start looking at some shotguns.
Oh, definitely. Whether they're English shotguns, whether they're Turkish shotguns with some really nice walnut.
Nicest ones I've seen are the Caesar, I believe the last name was pronounced Guarini. And those are very, very nice. Every bit as nice as a Browning and more. And they charge for it. They're $35,000 a piece. Yeah. I did not say $3,500. I said $35,000. They are expensive, but they come with a nice leather case.
Yeah. Well, we're getting to that time of day where we better go ahead and cover the 4 rules of firearm safety.
The most important part of the show. All right. Every firearm, until you visually and physically inspect and verify, is loaded. So go ahead and crack that action open, flip the cylinder out, remove the magazine, pull that slide back. Make sure that firearm is empty and you are not reloading it as you close it back up. Rule number 2. Keep that muzzle pointed in a safe direction at all times. Know exactly what you are covering and what you do and do not wish to destroy. Rule number 3, know what your target is and know what is beyond your target at all times. And quite possibly the most important rule is keep the booger hook off the bang switch until you are ready to discharge the firearm. Negligent discharges do not exist. Accidental discharges do not exist. Every one of them is negligent, and the negligence is putting your finger on the trigger before you're ready to shoot.
There you go. Yeah,
maybe the negligent discharge is, the concerns over that. Maybe that's one of the bigger problems behind the Army pistol contract. Especially if that general was talking about buying purchasing Glock 19s for everybody, which, that's.
Yeah, I don't think General Milley alluded to any specific model. I think what he was more commenting on was the fact that there was a bureaucracy involved in making a decision that should squarely fit in the respective
Some of the
circumstance.
other things that I read, he had made direct mention to Glock and the fact that there was already a government order for Glock 19s. And I think it was the way I took that to mean it was he just wanted to expand on that order.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, you got to remember that's a very political decision. Being chief of staff of the army, and you fart the wrong direction, you can get removed. So we've had chiefs of staff of the army that have been under some scrutiny for some poor decisions, and it's everything now is recorded, and everything is definitely able to be brought back up at a moment's notice and put out there for everybody to see. So those guys got to really use measured responses when it comes to things like that. But I would be interested to see what the Army finally does.
I really think that the Army should just save a whole bunch of money and rework the pistols that are in inventory right now. Buy all new, brand new magazines, good magazines too, not them checkmate, phosphorus coated ones. Buy some Metgar magazines, and go with a bullet better than 125, green full metal jacket.
I'm interested to see. I'm looking at my my local gun trader, and just my area is just people don't sell guns. But it's interesting enough that I've seen probably a lot more shotguns listed for sale at fairly cheap price. We're talking like Mossberg 500s and 500As for $250 on the used market.
That's a pretty good deal, and I'll tell you what, you can't go wrong with a Mossberg shotgun. There's a lot of debate, 500 or the 870 from Remington, and whether it's an old one or a new one, and Remington's current quality control, and Mossberg outsourcing parts to Mexico, and blah blah blah. I think either one is a good choice and a quality choice. I personally like the safety placement on the Mossberg more than I like the safety placement on the Remington.
Right.
That's my difference in them, and I think sometimes the Mossberg comes in a little bit cheaper.
Well, and that's the thing is Mossberg is going to probably come in cheaper and probably going to last longer.
I'll tell you what, I've never had a problem with any Mossberg shotgun I've ever owned, and I mean I've owned some crappy ones that. Well, I mean, like where I've had to replace extractors and lost my screw, and then ended up putting in a completely different screw with a great big nut on the side, and it still works. So,
yeah. Well, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to buy one here in the near future, but I definitely do need to start getting on the ball and finishing up this 223 Wild that I've got sitting in my safe, staring at me longingly to be completed.
Well, what's your magazine situation on that little Smith & Wesson thing? Did you ever pick up any more of them?
No, I didn't pick up any of them because honestly, I've only been able to go out and fire it once. We've had some pretty bad weather, and thankfully enough, today we had started off the day with rain showers. Thankfully, we didn't get blasted like North Texas did with the hail. But we've had pretty rainy weather.
I am so glad we missed that. I just did not want to go out and see like 2 trucks with busted windshields, man.
Yeah,
I saw
enough of that on the news.
Yeah, I mean, it was, well, the nice thing is there's going to be a bunch of dented up Camaros, hail sale cars for sale real soon.
Yeah, so much on the metal I don't mind, but the glass with holes in it the size of softballs, that's no bueno.
Yeah, and glass is it's just so expensive to replace it anymore. I mean,
I wonder if the insurance companies will actually consider that act of God kind of damage, or if they're gonna cover those losses.
I think usually with those hail sales, or with hail damage cars like that, I think they pretty much scrap them things out.
Yeah, I think so.
And I mean, I've seen plenty of after hail damage car sales, usually knock a couple grand off of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in the market for new cars anytime soon. I'm in the market for new guns.
I'm not in the market for a new car ever again. I think I'm gonna buy American and buy used. And pretty much any used vehicle is an American vehicle at that point.
Yeah, Yeah, well, there's legislation out there that's gonna be brought forth in the Hillary presidency that says, hey, you're gonna have to go ahead and turn over those in a buyback program. I think that's what she wants.
She could come and take my Isuzu Trooper from my cold dead hand.
Well, that's what the Cash for Clunkers program was, wasn't it? Was the
Yeah,
government buyback?
how can they buy back something they never paid for in the first place?
Yeah, that's where words have meaning.
Damn the words. Damn the words. We need one of those 1984 dictionaries.
You need to ban the words, man. Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of parallels between what you see going on in reality television and what you see going on in the presidential election cycle. So,
and what's really scary is there's parallels between what you see going on and in classic literature like Brave New World and 1984. And I'd like to give just a real quick shout out to anybody who may have missed it, but Walter, who has a Saltner event that comes on the weekends here. Past couple of weeks, he's been reading 1984, and I'll tell you, that's really, boy, it was really interesting timing, him deciding to read that, and just very reminiscent of what's going on today. You can see little bits of that in everything, and I'm telling you, don't let your kids text message, and man, those emoji things, that's wrong. That's like retrograde action, man. You're like devolving into hieroglyphics.
Yeah. Well, Michael, we're getting close to the bumper, so I want to give a big shout out to Jules. Thanks for putting us on and putting up with us, and a big shout to our faithful listeners out there on UCY lobby chat. It's good to have you guys.
Nick, I just can't thank Jules enough for this gift of giving us the chance to just yap about something that we really care about, and put our opinions out there, and if you disagree with them, well, I guess that's your prerogative. That's the beauty of this whole thing. It's really, there's nothing else like UCY.TV out there. So give it a listen. Up After Us tonight is Anti-Media, and they're 2 hours long now. They're really, really good, interesting radio.
Wow.
These are the guys who they had Berman Supreme on, and he even repeated the promise for a free pony. And right now, I'm thinking I want that free pony. Berman Supreme is something a hell of a lot better than anything else out there.
I'd go for some Monday night rehabilitation.
I got a plan. You're a dick. South Carolina represent.
Yeah, it takes a special breed to come out with the idiocracy quotes.
Yeah, well, that's me. You're a special breedling. So
there you go. All right. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks for listening. Good to be here, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Everybody, thanks a lot. Stick around. Keep the booger hook off the bank switch and listen to what Jules got to say. Talk to you guys later.